My name is Kristen, and at 67 years old, I thought I knew what it meant to be a proud mother. My only son, Jackson, was finally getting married, and I was overjoyed to welcome Amanda into our small family. But at the rehearsal dinner, while everyone was celebrating, Amanda pulled me aside. With a cold smile, she whispered words that stopped my heart. "Starting tomorrow, you will no longer be part of this family." I stood frozen, unable to believe what I had just heard. Little did she know what would happen at the church the next day. Before I continue my story, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, please hit the like button and subscribe to show your support. Jackson and I had always been close, but our bond grew even stronger after my husband David passed away when Jackson was just 15. The loss hit us both hard, and we became each other's support system. Our weekly Sunday dinners became sacred, a time when we could talk about anything and everything over homemade lasagna or pot roast. Even as Jackson grew into adulthood, went to college, and started his career as an architect, he never missed our special tradition unless he was out of town. I still remember the day Jackson called me, his voice bubbling with excitement. "Mom, I met someone. Her name is Amanda, and she's incredible." They had met at his architectural firm, where she worked in the marketing department. According to Jackson, Amanda had walked into a meeting, confidently presented a new client strategy, and he was instantly captivated by her intelligence and poise. The first few times Jackson mentioned Amanda, I was cautiously optimistic. As a mother, you always worry about who captures your child's heart. But the more he spoke about her, describing her kind nature and how she volunteered at animal shelters on weekends, the more I looked forward to meeting this woman who had made my son so happy. 3 months into their relationship, Jackson brought Amanda to our favorite Italian restaurant for an introduction. I arrived early, nervously arranging and rearranging the silverware until they walked in. Amanda was stunning, tall with honey blonde hair and a smile that lit up her entire face. She greeted me with a warm hug complimenting the necklace I wore, a gift from my late husband. "Jackson has told me so much about you, Amanda," said her voice melodious and warm. "He says you make the best apple pie in Pennsylvania." Throughout dinner, Amanda asked thoughtful questions about my life, my work as a retired school librarian, and my hobbies. She laughed at my stories about Jackson's childhood mishaps and seemed genuinely interested in our family traditions. By dessert, I was already imagining her at our holiday gatherings and family reunions. As their relationship progressed, I watched my son fall deeper in love. Jackson had dated other women before, but never had I seen him so completely smitten. When he called me 6 months later to announce they were engaged, I cried tears of joy. "She said yes, Mom," Jackson exclaimed over the phone. "I took her to Fairview Gardens, where Dad proposed to you just like we talked about." I got down on one knee under that big oak tree, and she started crying before I even finished asking. Jackson asked if I would help plan the wedding, and I was touched by his request. Though I knew Amanda's parents were wealthy, her father Warren owned a successful chain of high-end furniture stores throughout the Northeast, and her mother Diane came from old money. I was grateful to be included. The first wedding planning session took place at Amanda's parents' sprawling colonial home in the affluent part of town. Their house was immaculate with professionally decorated rooms that looked straight out of a magazine. I felt slightly out of place in my modest dress, bringing my old wedding planning book and family recipe cards as my contribution. Yet Amanda welcomed my input initially. She seemed delighted when I offered to make personalized wedding favors, small jars of homemade jam with custom labels. "That would be so special, Kristen," she said, touching my hand. "So much more meaningful than store-bought." Jackson and Amanda purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a desirable neighborhood with considerable financial help from her parents. When they invited me over for the housewarming, I brought a quilt I had spent months making as a gift. Amanda hugged me tightly. "This is exactly what the guest room needs," she said. "Your craftsmanship is amazing." During those early months, I noticed small things that gave me pause. How Amanda would sometimes cut Jackson off mid-sentence, or the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she spoke to service staff. But I dismissed these observations. No one is perfect, and Amanda made my son happy. That was what mattered most. One evening, after a productive day addressing wedding invitations together, Jackson walked me to my car. "Thank you, Mom," he said, giving me a tight hug. "For everything. For accepting Amanda, for helping with the wedding, for just being you. Dad would be so proud of us right now." His words warmed my heart, reinforcing my determination to embrace Amanda fully as the daughter I never had. I returned home that night feeling blessed that my son had found someone who seemed to complement him so perfectly. As the months passed and wedding plans accelerated, I threw myself into preparations. I collected family recipes for the caterer to consider, researched meaningful readings for the ceremony, and started crafting the wedding favors. Amanda's parents were covering most of the considerable expenses, but I wanted to contribute in ways that added personal touches. Amanda's parents always maintained a certain distance during our interactions. They were unfailingly polite, but I sensed they viewed me as somewhat inconsequential to the proceedings. Warren would listen to my suggestions with a tight smile before deferring to his daughter's preferences, while Diane often seemed to be examining my clothing or accessories with a slightly critical eye. Still, I remained positive. Different families have different dynamics, and I was determined to be flexible and supportive. Whenever I felt a twinge of uncertainty about Amanda's occasional cold glance when Jackson wasn't looking, or her controlling tendencies regarding wedding decisions, I reminded myself that wedding planning is stressful for everyone, especially the bride. My friends told me how lucky Jackson was to have found someone so accomplished and beautiful. On paper, Amanda was perfect. College-educated, career-driven, socially conscious, and from a good family. I convinced myself that any reservations I felt were simply the natural worry of a mother seeing her only child create a new primary relationship. How wrong I was to ignore those early warning signs. How naive I was to dismiss the subtle red flags that, in retrospect, were waving right before my eyes. The shift in Amanda's behavior began approximately 6 months before the wedding. The change was so gradual that at first I questioned whether I was imagining things. It started during a wedding planning meeting at their house. I had brought samples of the wedding favors I had been working on. Small mason jars filled with homemade blackberry jam, adorned with handwritten tags and ribbon that matched their wedding colors. "Oh," Amanda said when I proudly displayed them. Her voice had a strange edge I hadn't heard before. "These are quaint. But we actually decided to go with personalized wine stoppers instead. I meant to tell you." Jackson looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I carefully packed away my samples, feeling the sting of rejection but telling myself not to be oversensitive. It was their wedding after all, and plans change. A week later, Jackson mentioned a cake tasting appointment. "That sounds wonderful," I said. "What time should I meet you there?" There was an awkward pause before Jackson replied, "Actually, Mom, there's limited space at the bakery." Amanda thought it would be best if just she and I went along with her mother. I swallowed my disappointment. Of course that makes sense. Soon after, I noticed Jackson wasn't responding to my text messages as promptly as usual. Sometimes hours would pass before I received a brief reply. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent, with Amanda often creating last-minute conflicts. "Sorry, Mom," Jackson would say. "Amanda's college friend is in town," or "Amanda made reservations at this restaurant she's been wanting to try." One Sunday when they did come for dinner, I overheard Amanda as she inspected my living room. "The decor is a bit dated, isn't it?" she murmured to Jackson. "All these crafty things everywhere. Don't you think your mom would be happier in one of those senior communities?" I pretended not to hear, busying myself in the kitchen. Jackson was 32 and I was still in my 60s, active and independent. The suggestion that I should be in a senior community was not only hurtful but puzzling. During dinner, Amanda picked at her food. "The sauce is a bit heavy for my taste," she commented. "I've been trying to teach Jackson about cleaner eating. Less cream, more fresh herbs." My pot roast had been Jackson's favorite meal since childhood. I glanced at my son, expecting him to defend our traditional family recipe, but he simply nodded in agreement with Amanda. After they left that evening, I called my best friend Donna, who had known Jackson since he was a baby. "I feel like I'm losing him," I confessed, tears welling in my eyes. "Amanda seems different now, colder somehow." "Have you talked to Jackson about it?" Donna asked. I had tried once. When I gently mentioned that I felt excluded from wedding preparations, Jackson had become defensive. "Amanda is under a lot of stress," he said. "Her parents are paying for almost everything, and she's trying to manage their expectations while working full-time. Can you try to be more understanding?" His response left me feeling guilty for expressing any concerns. Was I being selfish? Was I the problem? The situation escalated when the wedding invitations were sent out. The thick cream envelope arrived in my mailbox, and I opened it with excitement. Inside, I discovered I had been listed simply as Mrs. Kristen Miller rather than mother of the groom. It seemed like a small detail, but it felt significant, another subtle erasure of my role in Jackson's life. When I visited Jackson at his office to discuss my concerns, hoping to catch him alone without Amanda's influence, he seemed distracted and uncomfortable. "Mom, I only have a few minutes before my next meeting," he said, checking his watch repeatedly. "Can we talk about this another time?" I left feeling dismissed, fighting back tears as I walked to my car. That night, I sat alone in my living room looking through old photo albums. Pictures of Jackson growing up, his first day of school soccer games, high school graduation, college move-in day. In every important moment of his life, I had been there cheering him on, supporting his dreams. Now it felt like I was being systematically pushed to the periphery. 2 months before the wedding, Amanda suggested my mother of the groom dress was inappropriate. I had chosen a lovely blue gown that complemented my figure while remaining appropriately elegant. "Kristen," she said, during a fitting her voice, dripping with false concern that color might photograph poorly next to my mother's champagne dress. "Perhaps something in a darker shade would be more flattering for your body type and age." I changed the dress, not wanting to create conflict. I selected a navy gown that was beautiful but more conservative than my original choice. A week later, I discovered through Jackson's cousin that Amanda had uninvited several of my family members, including my niece Abby and her children. "It's nothing personal," Jackson explained when I called him, clearly repeating Amanda's words. "We had to reduce the guest list because of venue size restrictions." Yet I later learned from mutual friends that Amanda had added several of her college sorority sisters to the guest list in the same time frame. At the bridal shower organized by my friends, Amanda was polite but distant. She opened my gift, a delicate silver picture frame engraved with their names and wedding date, with a perfunctory thank you before quickly moving to the next present. Throughout the event, she spent more time chatting with her bridesmaids than acknowledging the efforts of the women who had known and loved Jackson his entire life. My brother Tom, never one to stay silent, confronted Jackson at a family barbecue. "What's going on with you and your mother?" he asked bluntly. "She raised you alone after your father died, and now you're treating her like an acquaintance." Jackson's face flushed with anger. "You don't understand our situation," he snapped. "Amanda feels like Mom is trying to take over the wedding and smother us. We need space to become our own family unit." The words cut deep. I had never intended to smother them. I had only wanted to be involved in this important milestone in my son's life. As the wedding date approached, I received the seating chart for the reception. I discovered I was seated far from the main table, placed with distant relatives of Amanda's family whom I had never met. When I mentioned this to Jackson, he sighed with obvious frustration. "Can you please just go with it, Mom?" Amanda spent hours on the seating arrangements to balance family dynamics. The most heartbreaking moment came when Jackson forgot our standing birthday tradition. For 17 years since his father died, we had always had breakfast together on my birthday, no matter what day of the week it fell on. This year, I received only a text message, "Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry, can't make breakfast. Amanda and I have a meeting with the florist. We'll call later." He never called. When I finally reached him the next day, Amanda answered his phone. "Jackson's in the shower," she said. "He mentioned he forgot your birthday thing. I'm sure you understand that with the wedding so close, we have priorities to manage." After we hung up, I heard Amanda's voice through the phone. She had failed to disconnect properly. I swear, she's so needy. It's exhausting. My sister suggested that Amanda might be deliberately isolating Jackson from his family, a common tactic of controlling partners. "She's separating him from his support system," she warned. "This isn't healthy, Kristen. I tried to connect with Amanda's parents, hoping they might provide some insight into their daughter's behavior. I called Diane under the pretense of discussing wedding details. I was wondering if we could have coffee sometime, I suggested. Just the two of us mothers. I'm terribly busy with the charity gala I'm chairing, she replied coolly. Perhaps after the honeymoon. Amanda tells me you've been quite involved in the wedding planning. It's nice you have so much free time for crafts. The dismissive tone made her real message clear. I was not considered an equal, nor was my relationship with my son valued. One evening, while checking social media, I realized I could no longer see Amanda's posts. She had blocked me without explanation, while still maintaining connections with other family members. As the wedding grew closer, my anxiety intensified. I had sleepless nights wondering how my relationship with Jackson would change after the marriage. Would I still be welcome in their lives at all? Would there be grandchildren I would only see on rare, supervised occasions? The tension became almost unbearable as the wedding weekend approached. I contemplated not attending, sparing myself further humiliation and rejection. But maternal love won out. Whatever Amanda's feelings toward me, Jackson was my son. I would be there for him on his important day, even if it meant swallowing my pride and accepting my diminished role in his life. I had no idea just how dramatic the situation would become, nor how drastically events would unfold at the rehearsal dinner the following night. 3 months before the wedding, the isolation tactics became more overt. What had started as subtle exclusion evolved into systematic removal of my influence from Jackson's life. I received an email from Amanda with an updated guest list for my records. Scanning through it, my heart sank as I noticed several names missing. My cousin Grace, who had helped raise Jackson during summers when I worked extra jobs, my longtime neighbor Arthur, who had taught Jackson to fish, and even my club friends who had known Jackson his entire life. When I called Jackson about these omissions, his explanation sounded rehearsed. The venue has strict capacity limits, Mom. We had to make some tough decisions based on who we're closest to now, not in the past. But these people are family to us, I protested, my voice breaking slightly. Arthur is 82. This might be his last chance to see you at a major life event. Amanda's parents are paying over $30,000 for this venue, Jackson replied, a defensive edge to his voice. They get to have some say in who attends. I'm sorry, but that's just how it island. The conversation left me feeling hollow. The wedding was becoming unrecognizable, a showcase event rather than a meaningful family celebration. A week later, my friends threw a small bridal shower for Amanda at Donna's house. We had spent days preparing, making Amanda's favorite foods based on information Jackson had provided, decorating with photos of the couple, and putting together thoughtful gift baskets. Throughout the event, Amanda remained coldly polite, checking her phone constantly, and making a point of telling her bridesmaids that the real shower, organized by her mother, would be the following weekend at the country club. When she opened our gifts, she barely glanced at the handcrafted quilt I had spent months making, featuring squares that represented milestones in their relationship. This island, traditional, she said with a tight smile before quickly moving to the next present. Later, I overheard her telling a bridesmaid Jackson's mom and her friends are stuck in the last century. So many doilies and hand-sewn things. A bit embarrassing, honestly. The words stung, but I maintained my composure, determined not to give her any ammunition to paint me as difficult. My brother Tom had always been protective of me since my husband's death. After witnessing Jackson's increasingly distant behavior at a family gathering, he cornered my son near the grill. "What's going on with you, Jackson?" Tom asked directly. "Your mother raised you better than this. She worked 2 jobs after your father died to put you through college, and now you're acting like she's some distant relative you have to tolerate." Jackson's face hardened. "You don't understand our situation, Uncle Tom. Amanda feels smothered by Mom's constant presence and suggestions. We're trying to establish boundaries." "Boundaries," Tom scoffed. "Is that what you call cutting your mother out of wedding decisions and uninviting her friends? That's not boundaries, that's erasure." Their heated exchange ended when Amanda appeared smoothly, linking her arm through Jackson's and leading him away with whispered words that made him nod stiffly. Later, Amanda managed to spill red wine on my white blouse in what seemed like an accident but felt deliberate. Amanda's manipulation became more sophisticated. She began creating situations designed to make me appear difficult or emotionally unstable. At a menu tasting, she claimed I had criticized her choice of entrees to the caterer, something I had never done. When I tried to clarify the misunderstanding, she teared up, causing Jackson to ask me to please stop making everything so difficult. I found myself constantly walking on eggshells, afraid that any word or action might be twisted and reported back to Jackson as evidence of my interference. This strategy effectively silenced me, as defending myself only seemed to make matters worse. 6 weeks before the wedding, I received the seating chart for the reception. My heart sank when I saw I was not only far from the main table, but seated with distant acquaintances of Amanda's family, rather than with my own relatives or friends. The message was clear: I was being treated as an afterthought, not as the mother of the groom. When I gently raised the issue with Jackson, suggesting I might feel more comfortable seated with my brother or friends who would be attending, his response was dismissive. Amanda spent weeks perfecting these arrangements to balance family dynamics, he said, with obvious frustration. Can you please just go with it and not create problems? Her mother says the seating chart is already causing her migraines. The most painful blow came on my birthday, which fell on a Tuesday that year. Since his father's death, Jackson and I had maintained a tradition of having breakfast together on my birthday, regardless of our schedules. It was a small but meaningful ritual that connected us to happier times. That morning, I waited at our usual diner, a small table for two with a view of the park. I had arrived early, excited to see my son despite the recent tension. As the minutes ticked by with no sign of Jackson, I sent a text asking if he was running late. The response came an hour later: "Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry can't make breakfast. Amanda and I have a meeting with the florist. We'll call later." I sat alone, finishing my coffee with tears threatening to spill. The waitress who knew us as regulars asked where Jackson was. I managed a smile and a vague excuse about work emergencies. He never called that day. When I finally reached him the following morning, Amanda answered his phone. "Jackson's in the shower," she said, her voice artificially sweet. "He mentioned he forgot your birthday thing. I'm sure you understand that with the wedding so close, we have priorities to manage." Before hanging up, I heard her voice through the phone. She had failed to disconnect properly. "I swear she's so needy. It's exhausting." Those words echoed in my mind for days afterward. Had I become needy? Was my desire to maintain a relationship with my only child unreasonable? My sister Catherine visited that weekend, concerned after hearing about the birthday incident. As we sat in my garden, I confided my growing fears. "I think I'm losing him, Kat," I admitted, voice breaking. "Amanda seems determined to push me out of his life entirely." Catherine's expression grew serious. "This isn't about you being too involved or needy, Kristen. What Amanda's doing is textbook isolation, separating him from his support system. It's a common tactic of controlling partners. First family, then friends, until the person has no one to turn to but them." Her words sent a chill through me. I hadn't wanted to believe Amanda's actions were deliberately malicious rather than merely thoughtless. In a last attempt to build bridges, I reached out to Amanda's mother, Diane. Perhaps mother to mother we could find common ground. "I was hoping we might have coffee sometime," I suggested during a brief phone call. "Just the two of us. We'll be family soon after all." Her response was politely dismissive. "I'm chairing our hospital's charity gala this month, so my schedule is quite full. Perhaps after they return from their honeymoon." After a pause, she added, "Amanda mentions you've been quite involved in the wedding planning. It's nice you have so much free time for crafts and such." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. In her eyes, I was a quaint hobby enthusiast, not a professional woman who had retired after decades as a librarian and raised a successful son alone. That evening, while checking social media to see photos Jackson's cousin had posted from the engagement party, I discovered I could no longer view Amanda's profile. She had blocked me without explanation or confrontation while still maintaining connections with other family members. The final month before the wedding became increasingly stressful. I developed insomnia, lying awake, wondering what I could have done differently. Should I have been less involved? more assertive. Was there any way to salvage my relationship with my son? I contemplated not attending the wedding at all. Perhaps my absence would be easier for everyone than my awkward, unwanted presence. But maternal love ultimately won out. Whatever Amanda's feelings toward me, Jackson was my son. I would be there for him on his important day, even if it meant swallowing my pride and accepting my diminished role in his life. As the rehearsal dinner approached, I prepared myself emotionally for what would likely be a difficult evening. I could never have anticipated just how difficult it would become, nor the shocking words Amanda would speak to me in a private moment that would change everything. The rehearsal dinner was held at the Oakmont Country Club, the most exclusive venue in our county. As I drove through the wrought iron gates and up the winding driveway lined with perfectly manicured trees, I felt increasingly out of place. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms took my 10-year-old sedan, which looked conspicuously modest among the luxury vehicles filling the parking area. Inside, the private dining room took my breath away despite my anxiety. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements in white and gold. A string quartet played softly in the corner, and waitstaff circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too artistic to eat. I had spent hours preparing for this evening, selecting a deep burgundy dress that I hoped struck the right balance between elegant and appropriate. I had my hair professionally styled and even splurged on a manicure, determined to give Amanda no reason to find fault with my appearance. When Jackson spotted me entering, he crossed the room with a smile that momentarily eased my worries. He looked handsome in his tailored suit, so much like his father that it made my heart ache with both pride and nostalgia. "Mom, you made it," he said, giving me a quick hug. "You look nice." Before I could respond properly, Amanda appeared at his side in a stunning white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her blonde hair was arranged in an intricate updo, and diamonds glittered at her ears and throat. "Kristen, so glad you could join us," she said, air-kissing near my cheek. Her smile was perfect but didn't reach her eyes. "Jackson, your groomsmen are looking for you. Something about a speech." And just like that, my son was whisked away, leaving me standing alone in a room full of people who seemed to all know each other. I made my way to the bar, where I ordered a sparkling water with lime, needing to keep my wits about me. Throughout the cocktail hour, Amanda worked the room like a politician, charming everyone with practiced ease. She introduced her college friends to her relatives, made sure the photographer captured specific groupings, and periodically checked in with the event coordinator. Not once did she make any effort to include me in conversations or introduce me to her family members I hadn't yet met. I found myself gravitating toward the few familiar faces: my brother Tom and his wife Jackson's godfather Frank, and a couple of cousins who had made the guest list. Even they seemed somewhat subdued, having witnessed the gradual shift in dynamics over the past months. During dinner, I was seated at a table far from the main wedding party, sandwiched between Amanda's great-aunt and a business associate of her father's. The elderly Aunt Martha proved unexpectedly forthcoming after her second glass of wine. "So you're Jackson's mother," she said, studying me with rheumy eyes. "Amanda's quite the determined girl, isn't she? Always has been, even as a child. Gets what she wants no matter what." "She seems very organized," I offered neutrally, not wanting to be drawn into criticism. Martha chuckled. "That's one way to put it. My sister, Amanda's grandmother, used to say she had the smile of an angel and the determination of a bulldozer." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "This isn't her first engagement, you know. There was a doctor in Boston 2 years ago. Fell through rather suddenly right before the invitations went out." This information startled me. Jackson had never mentioned any previous engagement, which meant either he didn't know or had been instructed not to discuss it. When the time came for the rehearsal itself, we moved to a garden terrace where the coordinator walked us through the ceremony. I watched with a growing sense of unreality as Amanda's father practiced walking her down the aisle, and Jackson waited at the mock altar with his best man. The coordinator positioned me in the second row, far from where the immediate family would normally stand. "Shouldn't the mother of the groom be in the front row, my brother?" Tom asked loudly. The coordinator looked uncomfortable. We're following the couple's specified arrangement. After the rehearsal, I overheard Amanda's father speaking with the wedding planner about the reception schedule. I realized with a jolt that my traditional mother of the groom toast had been removed from the program entirely. As the evening wound down, I made one last attempt to connect with Amanda, catching her alone near the ladies' room. I had brought a small gift, a vintage handkerchief that had belonged to my grandmother, embroidered with blue flowers. "I thought you might like this for tomorrow," I said, offering the delicate fabric. "It could be your something old and something blue." Amanda took the handkerchief between two manicured fingertips, as if it might soil her hands. Once she confirmed no one else was within earshot, her facade dropped completely. Her smile vanished, replaced by a cold stare that sent a chill through me. "Let me make something perfectly clear, Kristen," she said, her voice low and hard. "Starting tomorrow, you will no longer be part of this family. Jackson doesn't need you anymore, and I'll make sure he realizes that. Your clingy, small-town librarian act might have worked while he was growing up, but he's moving into my world now." I stood frozen, unable to process the venom in her words. "But he's my son," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Amanda's laugh was brittle. "And he's my husband. I've worked too hard setting up our future to have you constantly reminding him of his modest origins. After the honeymoon, we'll be moving to the West Coast for his new job." "New job," I echoed, blindsided by this information. "Jackson hasn't mentioned any job change." "It's with my father's friend's firm. All arranged." Her smile returned colder than ever. "Don't worry, we'll send Christmas cards." With that, she pressed the handkerchief back into my palm, turned on her heel, and rejoined the party, immediately linking arms with Jackson and laughing as if our exchange had never happened. I felt physically ill, my chest tight with shock and grief. The room seemed to spin around me as the full impact of her words sank in. This wasn't just about wedding planning or personality clashes. Amanda was systematically removing me from my son's life, and she had just made it abundantly clear that this was her intention all along. Unable to maintain my composure any longer, I found Jackson to make my excuses. "I'm not feeling well," I told him, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I think I should head home early to rest before tomorrow." "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked, genuine concern flashing across his face. "Do you need me to drive you?" Before I could answer, Amanda appeared at his side. "Jackson, your best man is about to give his speech. You can't miss that." To me, she added with false sympathy, "You do look tired, Kristen. It's probably best you get your rest. Big day tomorrow." I nodded numbly, kissed my son's cheek, and made my escape. In my car, safely out of sight, I finally allowed the tears to come. They streamed down my face as I drove home in the dark, my mind racing with Amanda's threats and the realization that I was losing my son in a way I had never anticipated. At home, I collapsed onto my sofa, still in my fancy dress, and called Donna. "She told me I won't be part of their family after tomorrow," I sobbed into the phone. "She's planning to move him across the country. I don't know what to do." "You can't let her win," Donna said firmly. "That's exactly what she wants, for you to give up and go away quietly." "But what can I do? Jackson won't believe me if I tell him what she said. He'll just think I'm trying to come between them." "Then you need evidence," Donna replied after a moment's thought. "If Amanda is this manipulative, there must be more to the story. You need to find out what she's hiding before that wedding happens." I spent the night alternating between tears and determination. By morning, I had made my decision. Before I lost my son forever, I needed to know exactly who Amanda was and what she was hiding. The wedding was scheduled for 4 o'clock the next day. I had less than 12 hours to uncover the truth. As dawn broke on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, I sat at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, my mind clearer than it had been in months. Donna's words echoed in my thoughts. If Amanda is this manipulative, there must be more to the story. The time for passivity was over. If I wanted to protect my son, I needed to act. My first call was to Amanda's cousin Lisa, who had seemed uncomfortable during various wedding events and had made a point of speaking kindly to me when Amanda wasn't looking. "Lisa, this is Kristen Miller, Jackson's mother. I hope I'm not calling too early." Mrs. Miller. She sounded surprised. No, I'm up. Is everything okay? I need to ask you something important, I said, keeping my voice steady. About Amanda. I think you might know things that could help me understand what's happening. There was a long pause. I shouldn't be talking to you. Please, I pressed. This is about my son's future. You've seen how she's been treating me. I think there's more going on than I understand. Another silence then, a sigh. Look, I don't know much, but this isn't Amanda's first engagement. There was a doctor in Boston about 2 years ago, Richard something. The wedding was all planned, expensive venue booked, dress bought. Then suddenly, it was off. What happened? Amanda never gave details to the family. She just said he wasn't the right person after all. But my brother was friends with Richard's cousin, and he heard a different story. Apparently, Richard discovered some things about Amanda that scared him enough to walk away even after putting down non-refundable deposits. My heart raced. What things? I don't know specifics. But I heard it had something to do with money and lies about her past. Mrs. Miller. I shouldn't be saying this, but Amanda has always been about appearances and status. Since we were kids, she would do anything to get what she wanted. And I mean anything. I thanked Lisa for her honesty and immediately began searching online for Richard Dr. Boston Amanda Preston engagement. Nothing relevant appeared. I tried various combinations until I remembered that Amanda's mother's maiden name was Levine. On a hunch, I searched Richard Dr. Boston Amanda Levine. A hit, a hospital charity gala photo from 3 years ago showing Dr. Richard Watkins and fiancée Amanda Levine. I now had a full name to work with. My next call was to an unexpected resource, Sandra, who had worked with Amanda at her previous job before the marketing position at Jackson's firm. We had met briefly at a work function months ago, and she had given me her card when she learned I was Jackson's mother, mentioning that she had interesting stories about Amanda. Sandra, this is Kristen Miller. We met at the holiday party last December. Oh yes, Jackson's mom, how are you? I need some information about Amanda. You hinted that you had stories. Sandra's voice dropped. Is this line secure? I mean, is anyone else listening? No, I'm alone. What's going on? Amanda didn't leave our company voluntarily like she claims. She was fired for financial irregularities. Nothing was proven definitively enough for legal action, but client funds were being redirected to a personal account. About $15,000 went missing while she managed the event's budget. My blood ran cold. Were the police involved? No. The company handled it quietly to avoid bad publicity, and the money mysteriously reappeared after she was confronted. But everyone knew. That's why her reference from us was so basic. Just confirmation of employment dates, nothing more. I thanked Sandra and hung up, my mind racing. If Amanda had been fired for financial misconduct, what else might she be hiding? With trembling hands, I searched Amanda Levine marriage records and hit pay dirt. A marriage license issued 4 years ago in Connecticut between Amanda Levine and James Hartley. There was no record of a divorce that I could find, which raised alarming questions. I called my friend Eleanor, whose daughter worked for a private investigation firm. Within an hour, she had connected me with an investigator who agreed to run an emergency background check given the circumstances. While waiting for his call back, I did more digging. On a whim, I searched for Amanda on dating sites, not expecting to find anything. To my shock, an active profile appeared on an exclusive dating service under the name Mandy Levine. The profile had been updated just last week, featuring photos I recognized from a recent vacation she and Jackson had taken to Bermuda. The profile stated she was single, never married, and looking for successful professionals who enjoy the finer things in life. It listed her occupation as corporate executive rather than her actual marketing position. My phone rang, the investigator calling back. Mrs. Miller, I've found some concerning information. Amanda Preston, born Amanda Levine, has a history of financial irregularities. 3 maxed-out credit cards, a defaulted car loan from 2 years ago, and a pending civil suit from her former landlord for unpaid rent and property damage. But her family is wealthy, I said, confused. On paper, yes. but they're heavily leveraged. The furniture stores have been losing money for years, and there's a tax lien against their primary residence. They maintain appearances, but they're essentially broke. This explained why, despite their seeming wealth, Amanda's parents had accepted my modest contributions to the wedding, and why they had been so eager to have Jackson, with his stable career and excellent credit, join their family. The investigator continued. There's more. She is technically still married to James Hartley. They filed for divorce, but it was never finalized because she stopped responding to court notices. Legally, she can't marry your son. I thanked him and sat in stunned silence after hanging up. Amanda was still married. She had financial problems. She was actively maintaining a dating profile. And based on what I had learned from Sandra, she had likely been involved in financial misconduct at her former workplace. My final discovery came when I called Jackson's bank pretending to be Amanda with a question about our joint account. The customer service representative helpfully informed Mrs. Preston that the last 5 checks deposited, which I knew were wedding gift checks from my family members who had sent them early, had been processed into account ending in 4,732. I knew from helping Jackson set up his accounts years ago that his accounts ended in 9,847. The checks had gone into Amanda's personal account, not their joint one. As all these pieces came together, I felt a sickening clarity. Amanda wasn't just pushing me out of Jackson's life because she disliked me or wanted control. She was hiding significant secrets and legal issues that would threaten her carefully constructed facade. The most troubling discovery came last. In searching Amanda's name with relocation and West Coast, I found her name on a lease application for an apartment in Seattle, dated 2 weeks earlier. The application listed her as single and was for a 1-bedroom unit. Whatever her plans involving a move, they might not include Jackson at all once she had access to his assets. With just hours before the ceremony, I faced an agonizing moral dilemma. Should I present these discoveries to Jackson and potentially ruin what should be the happiest day of his life? Or should I remain silent, allowing him to marry a woman who was legally still married to someone else, financially dishonest, and potentially planning to exploit him? The weight of maternal responsibility had never felt heavier. I gathered all the evidence I had collected, printouts, notes from phone calls, the investigator's preliminary report, and placed them in a folder. With shaking hands, I began to dress for my son's wedding, knowing that by the end of the day, everything would change one way or another. I arrived at the church an hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. Street. Mark's Episcopal had been in our community for generations, its stone walls and stained glass windows witnessing countless weddings, including my own 35 years earlier. Today, it might witness something entirely different. I had chosen my outfit carefully, a tailored navy blue dress with a matching jacket pearl earrings that had belonged to my mother and a simple gold bracelet my husband had given me on our last anniversary before his death. I wanted to look elegant but unobtrusive, determined that whatever happened, no one could criticize my appearance or demeanor. The evidence folder was tucked into my handbag, its weight seeming far greater than its actual size. As I entered through the side door, I noticed florists making final adjustments to elaborate white rose and lily arrangements that adorned every pew and doorway. My first goal was to speak with Amanda alone before she was surrounded by bridesmaids and family. Following a hushed conversation with the church coordinator, I learned she was already in the bride's room preparing. Taking a deep breath, I knocked on the door. "Who is it?" came Amanda's voice, sharp with irritation. "It's Kristen. I need to speak with you privately for a moment." Silence, then footsteps. The door opened a crack, revealing Amanda in a silk robe, her hair partially styled, makeup impeccable even at this early stage. "What are you doing here so early?" she demanded. "The mother of the groom isn't needed until 15 minutes before the ceremony." "I think you know why I'm here," I said quietly. "We need to talk. Alone." Something in my tone must have registered, because after a brief hesitation, she turned to the hairstylist and makeup artist. "Give us the room for 5 minutes." Once they had left, closing the door behind them, Amanda's demeanor changed completely. The pleasant mask dropped, replaced by cold hostility. "Make it quick." I have a schedule to maintain. I opened my handbag and removed the folder. I know about Richard Watkins in Boston. I know you were fired from Meridian Marketing for financial irregularities. I know your parents are deeply in debt despite appearances. I paused, watching her face pale slightly. And I know you're still legally married to James Hartley. Her expression shifted from shock to calculation in seconds. I don't know what you think you've discovered with your amateur sleuthing, but you're mistaken. Am I? Because I have documentation for everything I've just mentioned. I opened the folder, showing her the printouts. I also know about your active dating profile as Mandy Levine, updated just last week, and the lease application for a one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, in your name only. Amanda's eyes narrowed dangerously. None of this proves anything except that you're a desperate, pathetic woman who can't let go of her son. The wedding gift checks from my family that were sent early, I continued steadily. They were deposited into your personal account, not the joint account you share with Jackson. That's theft, Amanda. It was a banking error, she snapped. Those checks were always intended for me anyway. And the fact that you legally can't marry Jackson today because you're still married to someone else? Her laugh was brittle. Minor paperwork issue. The divorce is being processed. That's not what court records show. You abandoned the proceedings over a year ago. For a moment, naked rage flashed across her face, so intense it made me take a step back. Then, just as quickly, she composed herself, a calculating look, replacing the anger. Even if any of this were true, which it isn't, Jackson would never believe you over me. I've made sure of that. You've seen how easily I've shaped his perception of you over these past months. Her candid admission of manipulation chilled me. Why? I asked. Why go to all this trouble? Jackson has what I need: financial stability, a good name, professional connections. He's malleable, easily guided, the perfect stepping stone. She smiled coldly. Though I admit isolating him from you was particularly satisfying. You were so transparent with your homemade jams and family recipes, desperately trying to claim territory. He's my son, I said simply. I love him. Love, she scoffed. How quaint. This is about survival and advancement. My parents lost everything in bad investments 3 years ago. The stores are mortgaged to the hilt. The house is being foreclosed on next month. I needed a solution, and Jackson presented himself perfectly. Her casual cruelty left me momentarily speechless. She used that moment to step closer, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Let me be absolutely clear. If you breathe a word of any of this to Jackson or anyone else, I will make sure he never speaks to you again. I've already laid the groundwork, painting you as emotionally unstable, clinging to your adult son because you have nothing else in your life. One word from me and he'll cut you off completely. I met her gaze steadily. I'm willing to take that risk. Security, she suddenly called out, her voice transforming to one of distress. Help! The door burst open, and a large man in a suit appeared. One of Amanda's cousins who worked in private security I recognized from the rehearsal dinner. This woman is harassing me before my wedding, Amanda said, tears suddenly welling in her perfectly made-up eyes. Please escort her out immediately. Mrs. Miller, you need to leave the man, said firmly, taking my arm. I'm the mother of the groom, I protested. I have every right to be here. Not if you're upsetting the bride, he replied, grip tightening. Miss Preston's father has hired me to ensure the day runs smoothly. Either you leave quietly now and return just before the ceremony, or you won't be allowed back in at all. As he began guiding me toward the door, Amanda's maid of honor appeared in the hallway, witness to the tail end of the confrontation. The look of confusion on her face gave me hope that not everyone was completely under Amanda's spell. Outside in the hallway, I pulled free of the security guard's grip. I'm not leaving the church. My son is getting married today. He hesitated, apparently not having clear instructions for this scenario. Fine. But stay away from the bride's room. And if you cause any disruption, you will be removed. Left alone, I knew I had to find Jackson before the ceremony. According to tradition, he would be in the pastor's study with his groomsmen. I made my way there, heart-pounding evidence folder clutched to my chest. I knocked on the study door, and Jackson's best friend Mike opened it. The room beyond was filled with tuxedoed young men adjusting cufflinks and boutonnieres. "Mrs. Miller," Mike said warmly. "Good to see you." "I need to speak with Jackson," I said. "Privately. It's important." Mike glanced over his shoulder, then back at me with concern. "Everything okay?" "Please, Mike. It's urgent." He nodded and disappeared into the room. Moments later, Jackson emerged handsome in his black tuxedo, his father's cufflinks gleaming at his wrists. The sight of him so much like his father on our wedding day made my heart ache. "Mom, what's going on?" Mike said. "You seemed upset." "We need to talk somewhere private," I said. "Please, Jackson, it's important." He frowned, checking his watch. "The ceremony starts in 45 minutes. Can't it wait until after?" "No," I said firmly, "it can't." Reluctantly, he followed me to a small anteroom off the main corridor. Once inside, with the door closed, I turned to face him. "Jackson, there are things you need to know about Amanda before you marry her." His expression immediately hardened. "Mom, if you've come here to try to stop this wedding with more complaints about how she's changed me or excluded you, I don't want to hear it." "This isn't about me," I insisted, opening the folder. "Amanda is still legally married to another man. She has serious financial problems. She's been lying to you about fundamental things." I tried to show him the documentation, but he took a step back, shaking his head. "Stop it. Just stop. Amanda warned me you might try something like this. She said your jealousy and inability to let go might lead you to make up stories." "I'm not making anything up," I pleaded. "Look at the evidence. Call this investigator." I held out the business card. "Verify it yourself." "An investigator?" His voice rose in disbelief. "You hired someone to investigate my fiancée. Do you have any idea how invasive and inappropriate that is?" "I had to know the truth," I said desperately. "She told me last night that after today I would no longer be part of your family. That she's been deliberately separating you from me." "Because you've been suffocating us," he exclaimed. "Every decision, every plan you've tried to insert yourself. Amanda needs space to become my wife without feeling like she's competing with my mother." It was clear he wasn't going to listen, at least not in that moment. Years of maternal instinct and deep love for my son led me to a difficult decision. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly, gathering my dignity. "I'll be sitting in the church when the ceremony begins. I love you, Jackson, and I always will, no matter what happens or what you believe about me." As I left the anteroom, I knew I had one last chance to prevent a terrible mistake. If Jackson wouldn't listen, perhaps others would. The moral question now was whether to speak during the ceremony itself, to stand up when the pastor asked if anyone knew any reason why these two should not be Wednesday. The thought made my stomach clench with anxiety. I had never been one for public confrontation or dramatic gestures. But sometimes love requires courage beyond our comfort zones. With 40 minutes until the ceremony, I found a quiet pew in the rapidly filling church, sat down and prayed for guidance, the evidence folder heavy in my lap. The church filled with guests in their finest attire, excited murmurs, and occasional laughter creating a festive atmosphere. Ushers guided people to their seats, separating friends and family of the bride from those of the groom. I sat alone in my designated spot, the evidence folder on my lap, heart pounding with apprehension. As the music began and the processional started, I watched bridesmaids in blush-colored gowns walk gracefully down the aisle. Jackson stood at the altar, handsome and straight-backed, looking nervous but happy. The sight of my son waiting to begin his married life brought tears to my eyes, tears of love mingled with fear for what might happen next. When the traditional bridal march began, and everyone stood turning to watch Amanda appear at the rear of the church on her father's arm, I made my final decision. I wouldn't disrupt the ceremony unless absolutely necessary. I would give Amanda one last chance to do the right thing. The minister welcomed everyone warmly and spoke about the sanctity of marriage. I barely heard his words, too focused on the moment I knew was coming. When he finally said, If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now, or forever hold their peace. The church fell into expectant silence. My hand shook as I stood. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. I apologized to my son, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. But there is a legal impediment to this marriage. Jackson's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Amanda's eyes locked onto mine with pure hatred. Amanda Preston is still legally married to another man. I continued, opening my folder. I have documentation here showing that her divorce proceedings were never completed. Additionally, there are other serious matters that should be addressed before any wedding takes place. The minister looked uncertainly between Amanda Jackson and me. Is this true? He asked Amanda. Before she could respond, a man stood up from the back of the church. A stranger I had never seen before. It's true, he said loudly. I'm James Hartley. Amanda and I were married 4 years ago. She abandoned the divorce proceedings over a year ago when she refused to divide our joint assets fairly. The church erupted in shocked whispers. I hadn't invited James, hadn't even known how to contact him. He must have been notified by the investigator, or had somehow learned of the wedding independently. Amanda's face had gone deathly pale. Her father stepped forward, whispering urgently in her ear, but she shook him off. This is ridiculous, she announced to the congregation. A pathetic attempt by a clingy mother and a vindictive ex to ruin my special day. Jackson, tell them we're proceeding with our wedding. Jackson stood frozen, looking between Amanda, James, and me. Is it true? He finally asked her. Are you still married? It's a technicality, she snapped. Some paperwork wasn't filed correctly. It doesn't mean anything. Actually, it means the marriage would be bigamous and therefore illegal, the minister interjected quietly. I stepped into the aisle, still holding the folder. Jackson, there's more. Amanda has been depositing your wedding gift checks into her personal account. She's been maintaining an active dating profile while engaged to you. She was fired from her previous job for financial irregularities. And she's applied for a 1-bedroom apartment in Seattle, under just her name. The evidence was too overwhelming to dismiss. Jackson turned to Amanda, devastation, replacing confusion on his face. Tell me none of this is true, he pleaded. Her beautiful features contorted with rage as she realized her carefully constructed plans were collapsing. You think you've won, she hissed at me, but you've just destroyed your son's happiness. He'll never forgive you for this humiliation. She turned to address the shocked guests. This wedding is obviously canceled. Thank you all for coming. With that, she dropped her bouquet, hitched up her elaborate gown, and strode down the aisle and out of the church, her parents hurrying after her in mortified silence. In the chaos that followed, I tried to approach Jackson, but he turned away, surrounded by his groomsmen who led him to the privacy of the pastor's study. The guests began dispersing in confusion, conversations buzzing with shock and speculation. I stood alone in the emptying church, simultaneously relieved that I had prevented a terrible mistake and heartbroken that I might have lost my son's love in the process. The following weeks were excruciating. Jackson refused my calls and texts. I learned through mutual friends that he had discovered even more deception once he began looking into Amanda's past, including significant debt she had hidden from him and plans to access his inheritance from his father. 1 month after the wedding, that wasn't I was working in my garden when a familiar car pulled into my driveway. My heart leaped as Jackson got out, looking tired and thin but resolute. Can we talk? He asked simply. Over coffee at my kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared countless conversations throughout his life, Jackson finally opened up. I was so angry at you, he admitted. Not just for the public embarrassment, but because deep down I knew you were right. There had been signs I ignored because I wanted so badly to believe in the future Amanda and I had planned. I never wanted to hurt you, I said softly. I only wanted to protect you. I know that now. After the initial shock wore off, I started finding evidence everywhere. She had been systematically draining our joint accounts. She had credit cards in my name I never knew about. The job in Seattle was real, but it was only for her. She was planning to leave once she had secured enough of my assets. Tears filled his eyes. How did I not see who she really was? Love makes us vulnerable, I said, reaching for his hand. She was very skilled at manipulation and deception. You weren't the first she had targeted, and you probably wouldn't have been the last. Over the following months, Jackson went through all the stages of grief for his lost relationship and dreams. There were days of anger when he blamed himself for being so easily fooled. There were periods of depression when he questioned his judgment and worth. Through it all, I was there. Not pushing, not saying I told you so, just loving him steadily as I always had. Our Sunday dinners resumed evolving into a healing ritual, where we slowly rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty and renewed appreciation. Jackson began to share more openly about his feelings and fears, no longer defensive or withdrawn. I understand now what you were trying to tell me all those months, he said one evening as we walked around the neighborhood after dinner. About how she was isolating me. I just couldn't see it happening. That's how it works, I explained gently. It's so gradual you don't realize you're being cut off until you're already alone. 6 months after the canceled wedding, Jackson had reclaimed his independence and confidence. He had thrown himself into his work, earning a promotion at his firm. He had reconnected with friends Amanda had subtly pushed away. And most importantly, he had developed a healthier understanding of what love should and shouldn't feel like. You know what the hardest lesson was, he asked me one Sunday. Learning that sometimes the people who tell us difficult truths are the ones who truly love us, while those who tell us only what we want to hear may have ulterior motives. His words touched my heart deeply. The pain of those difficult months had transformed into wisdom that would serve him throughout his life. Eventually, Jackson did meet someone new, a kind, straightforward woman named Julia who respected family bonds and had no interest in coming between a mother and son. The first time he brought her to Sunday dinner, I noticed how she included me in conversations, asked about family traditions, and genuinely seemed to value the relationship Jackson and I had maintained. The experience with Amanda taught me profound lessons as well. I learned that maternal love sometimes requires great courage, the courage to risk your child's anger when protecting them from harm. I learned that trusting my instincts wasn't interfering, but rather honoring the deep knowledge that comes from a lifetime of loving someone. Most importantly, I learned that family bonds, when authentic and healthy, cannot be permanently severed by outside influences. They may be tested, stretched, and even temporarily broken, but their essential strength remains. Today, as I look back on that tumultuous time, I'm grateful for the wisdom it brought us both. Jackson is happier now than he ever was with Amanda, building a life based on genuine connection rather than illusion. Our relationship is stronger for having weathered such a profound challenge together. Sometimes love means having the courage to stand up and speak an uncomfortable truth, even when it might cost you dearly. Sometimes the most powerful act of protection isn't sheltering someone from pain, but helping them face reality before even greater harm occurs. What experiences have you had with difficult truths in your families? Have you ever had to make the painful choice between peace and honesty? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories. And if you know someone who might be facing a similar situation, please share this video with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these difficult moments is the greatest comfort. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to speak your truth when it matters most.